But there is a Stanley Cup final going on right now.
Oh, really?
There's a lot to get into because we haven't had an episode since it started. So we've got 5 games to kind of work our way through, and we're gonna kind of just talk about some talking points in our mind, things that we've noticed. I don't know what you thought, but I'll let you kind of take the lead here.
Okay, the first and foremost, what I wanted to apologize. I was completely incorrect about Colorado coming out to a slow start. On last episode, I talked about I thought Tampa was going to win in 6 just because, like I said, normal, both teams rested. I liked Colorado in 6, but just because they were off for 3 weeks and Tampa was ready, had just played a Game 7, I thought Colorado was going to lose one at home, give one to Tampa because they came out not very strong, and I thought that's what would have propelled Tampa to win. I thought they would have won both at home, and I was completely incorrect. We were watching the game at Game 2 at a bar, and I remember saying to you, I have never seen a team check this well in my entire life.
Yeah, that's their game. They're so fast, and they'll just break you down in waves. You don't get any breathing room. I don't think Tampa's necessarily come up against a team like that. I would say Toronto was the closest of the teams they played so far, but we all know that Toronto doesn't check like that.
Mm-hmm.
They take shifts off sometimes, the Leafs, but it seems like this Colorado team, they don't. Like every time who's on the ice, like it doesn't matter who's on the ice. Sorry, it could be Darren Helm on the 4th line, or it could be Nathan MacKinnon on the 1st line. They all work their asses off, and that's why they've gotten to where they are. Never mind the skill, but when you combine that with that kind of work ethic, it's a pretty strong combo. And I think the resting was a good point, because as we went through that episode, you kind of almost talked me into picking Tampa. I ended up picking the Avs, but I did think they would. I wouldn't have been surprised if they started slow, but they really didn't. I guess there's just something in that locker room. Maybe it's Nate McKinnon and his just intensity, or Gabe Landeskog or Cale Makar kind of leading by example. I don't know what it is, but they looked like they didn't miss a beat.
I think it's desperation, honestly. I talked about this a lot. Like, when a team's back is up against the wall, like we saw with New York to Pittsburgh, we saw with honestly, that's what I was very impressed with through New York through this entire playoffs. When their backs were against the wall and they were back at home, the team turned into a different animal. We even said when we were watching Boston play Carolina and they went down 2-0, I believe, going back to Boston, I believe. Yes, because Carolina didn't lose any games at home. When that team's back was against the wall back in the Gardens, they turned into the Oilers in the mid-90s. And I think McKinnon, Landeskog, Makar know that this team isn't going to be what it is next year, and this might be honestly the best shot in their entire career.
Probably.
Yeah, and I think McKinnon's scared not to win a cup. I mean, I think all players should be scared not to win a cup. And yeah, they came out harder than I've ever seen any team play.
They came out. I don't know if it was them playing so well or if it was Tampa playing so bad, but Tampa looked really bad
In Game 1 and 2,
especially in Game 1. Well, they've only won. They've only won one Game 1 so far this playoffs, and they're sub 500 in Game 1s across their cup runs these 3 seasons.
Wow.
So they have a knack for starting slow, which is honestly not what you expected of a team that's won back-to-back. You figure eventually that's going to come back to bite you, but they're just that good. They're just that good. It doesn't really bother them, or it doesn't really seem to matter for them. But even still, I feel like when you play a team this good, if you're coming out slow, it's going to come back to bite you. 2-0 down against the Avs is not a place anyone wants. Of course, you don't want to be there, but that's a real hole against this team, and they just didn't look good. I know Game 1 went to overtime, but when we watched that game, the Avs were so dominant. They had way more scoring chances, high quality scoring chances, and through the first 2 games, we talked about this a couple times. When there's really dominant games, you can see like a split in the expected goals percentage chart, where literally every player on the Avs for the first 2 games had a positive expected goals for percentage, Corsi for percentage, whatever metric you want to use for possession, chance creation. They were all positive, and Tampa was pretty much all negative. So yeah, that first game was close. The second one wasn't close at all, but it was just such a dominant start by the Avs. I was kind of shocked that Tampa didn't step up in Game 2 to get that split on the road. But after that Game 2, I was kind of like, holy smokes, this is a different team that they're playing against.
Yeah, I mean, even slow starts. I mean, this is something I wanted to talk about too. It's a good segue. I am so surprised with Vasilevsky's fantastic numbers. The stats on him in the first 2 rounds of a series. First 2 games of his series over his tenure, and we'll look at it just this year in general. I put the numbers together, and I'm not counting the Florida series because Florida fell asleep at the wheel. But for the other 3 series, versus the Leafs, versus the Rangers, and versus the Avs, in games 1 and 2, Vazzy has a save percentage of .857, and he's allowed 28 goals. 28 goals.
Wow.
In the remainder of all of the games. Remember, the Leafs went to 7. This one's gone to 6, and the Rangers went to 6. Vazzy's let in 26 goals. He's let in 2 less goals in maybe, 15 more games with a .930 save percentage. I don't understand what it is. And even my uncle, when we were talking about it before the start of the series, said to me, for some reason, Vazzy takes forever to get into a series. But when he does, he's rock solid. And and I think, not to double down on Tampa, but the later that this series goes,
it's true, I
favor Tampa more and more.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. First and foremost, because Vasilevsky has turned into like Dominik Hasek in the end, right? In series clinching games, he's like 6-0 in his career.
Yeah,
and not even that. There's something to be said about Tampa having cup experience and playing in game 7s, especially in this year, right? Tampa had a game 7 against the Leafs. Has Colorado played a high-stress game this entire playoffs?
Not really. They've only lost 3 games all playoffs.
And one of them was to St. Louis in 6.
St. Louis in 6, and then 1 to these guys because they swept the Oilers and the whoever they played in the first one. I can't even remember.
Yeah,
Predators.
In general, I do think looking where we are now, Colorado should win. But if Tampa Bay can squeak out a win tonight, and we're recording on Sunday, so you'll see this tomorrow after Game 6. If this goes to 7, you have to favor Tampa in that scary Game 7.
Yeah, and you talked about Vazzy starting slow. I have a little note here. Kucherov did not impress me at all the first 2 games.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Tampa is known for their depth and finding random guys like a Nick Paul or a Brandon Hagel is going to score you a game-winning goal. But you need especially in a series like this, you need your stars to lead you. And especially when your team's not playing good, you need someone to just kind of grab a game and take over. Mm-hmm. But he had a 30% expected goals for percentage and a 40% Corsi for percentage through the first 2 games. Stamkos wasn't great either. I'm not just picking on Kucherov, but at least Stamkos had 6 hits through those games. Kucherov had 0. I know that's not Kucherov's game, but you talk about it all the time. When you're not having a good game, it's important to try and find other ways to impact the game. Mm-hmm. And Kucherov never seems to do that. Yeah, I was watching the game. I guess it was game 5. I feel like Kucherov is Willie on steroids because they both look like they pick their spots when they want to play. They're not going to forecheck. But when Kucherov's on, he's like a top 5 player in the league.
Oh, he's probably the best winger in the league when he's on and healthy.
And so when he wants to play and he's feeling it and he's at his best, I know he's a little bit banged up right now, so cut him a little bit of slack. But just generally speaking, that play style of looks like he's floating around, not going to forecheck, not going to hit, it's something that people pick on. But if you're like a Kucherov fan or you're Tampa Bay, you let him do that because you know when he turns it on, he's one of the best players in the world. I wish Willie could be a little more like that, but he doesn't have the skill set that Kuch has. But it was just something that I noticed, and you see that playing style even like soccer and basketball. People always harp on that playing style because it feels like it seems to a fan like they're not trying, they're not playing hard. But I think you put up with it when they're this good because he can literally change a game. He won the Conn Smythe last year. He could arguably win it again this year if they come through, although Vazzy might be favored. Mm-hmm. But just a little word on Kucherov because, man, he's good, but he must be frustrating to watch sometimes for Tampa fans.
For sure, and I think they put up with it because he also won a Hart Trophy and put up 120 points in a year.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But no, you're right. He's got, I don't know if this is a hockey term, but high-low work rates are his definition.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, he just seems to kind of play when he wants to, but, jeez, when he does,
Hey, you brought up something about the Conn Smythe. I wanted to talk about this a little bit.
Okay.
You talk about a lot, and so do a lot of analysts, and, it's true. The Conn Smythe is going to come from a winning team most, if not all of the time, unless a player is so unbelievably ridiculous, you have to give it to him.
Yeah.
And I thought this year the only player that would be given to if they made the Cup final was Connor McDavid.
He would have had a real strong argument because Makar at that point would have been out of the picture and nobody on Tampa's been crazy.
Yeah, not even that. I saw a stat a couple days ago that I still think he leads scoring in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
Could you ever see a world that if he led scoring once the cup finals were done and he was out in the conference finals that they would give it to him? Because you got to think about it. That was 7 less games at most that he played less.
Yeah. I think it would be tough.
He's
think,
putting up maybe one of the best playoff runs in history.
Yeah, I think there's no argument against that. I think that's true. And I'm not saying you shouldn't win. I just think the way that voters think is it's very grounded in sort of tradition's not the right word for this, but they're not really going to go against the grain and give it to a guy who got out in the conference finals. I think the only times that it's been handed out to a non-Stanley Cup winner was a finalist who played, and it's usually a goalie who plays out of their mind for the whole series and for the whole playoffs, and especially in that series because recency bias is so prevalent with these things. J.S. Shiger won it when the Ducks lost one year because he had an incredible playoffs and an incredible finals. I think if McDavid made it to the finals and lost, he'd have a really, really good chance.
Oh, for sure.
I just find it difficult, not because I don't agree that he should have it, but because of the way voting works. And we talk about it all the time. We talked about it for 2 weeks with the awards being handed out. Voters have a way of voting. There's like a convention, and they rarely go against that convention.
No, I agree. That was well said. He probably should be in the conversation, but won't get a vote because he didn't make it. But let's talk about who we think will win the Conn Smythe if Colorado versus Tampa wins. And I feel like we're gonna have the same answers. Like if Colorado wins, Makar's probably a lock, right?
I feel like he has to be. Yeah.
He's leading the Avalanche in points in the entire postseason. You know, probably shouldn't matter, but he's gonna take home 2 trophies this year. I mean, I wonder if voters are already seeing that he won the Norris. I mean,
I'm sure that all matters subconsciously in their minds.
Yeah,
for sure it does.
And he's honestly on a bit of a tangent here. Might be the best checking defenseman I have ever seen in my life. We talked, I remember, I think the second episode when we were very fresh into podcasting, or maybe the first, I made that joke about like me being able to coach the Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's something about Jared Bednar that these players buy into that make them check so hard, because
must be
the entire team checks like literal demons. I have never seen it in my life. The fourth line, the third line, even the first line, the players that should be Kucherovs, that should not skate back and stuff like that. Man, I don't understand.
Yeah, they're an incredibly hardworking team. And I think Bednar, of course, deserves credit. I think Nate he's like a sociopath. Honestly, he seems so driven. He's a snap show too. I think when you have a guy like that who leads you, who's not only your best player but also your most intense player, he's like he is the almost, you know, in terms of work ethic, like the right-handed version of Sidney Crosby. It makes sense. They train together. They're really good buddies.
Yep.
When you have a guy pulling you from the front, I feel like it's impossible not to work that hard. If you're a guy in the fourth line and you're seeing the best player on your team, arguably a top 3 player in the league, check harder than you, you're gonna step up because you know that's your job on the team.
It's true.
If he's leading it, everyone has to catch up to him.
Yeah. And
if everyone's playing at the same intensity he's playing at, you're gonna have one of the hardest working teams ever.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I guess there is something to be said about the top guys leading by example because they're probably gonna follow suit. But moving on, going to Tampa. If Tampa wins, I mean, down 3-1, which, by the way, on a tangent again, if they win, might be one of the best comebacks I've ever seen in sports history, next to the LeBron 2015. Just because,
same thing, similar.
Yes, but just because of the juggernaut that Colorado is. I mean, I guess LeBron played the juggernaut in the Golden State Warriors, but
similar.
The Avalanche are pretty comparable to the Warriors in terms of skill and dominance in the league. But if Tampa wins down 3-1, I think you got to give it to Vasilevsky. I know he had a bad first 2 games, but like I said, it should be for the entire postseason. In the first few games, he has that .850 save percentage, and if they win, it'll go to 7. He will have to be phenomenal in game 6 and 7s, right? There can't exist a Tampa win if he's not good. He will have to have been .940 in those last few games, and I think, just like you said, because the stars on Tampa haven't really been great.
They haven't been out of this world.
There's no one to give it to, and he's going to be the guy that gets it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that it'll go down that route as well. It helps that, we have a little bet stamp future running on that. You can follow us on the media picks there if you have the bet stamp app with the code UFR. So we're definitely pulling for that one if Tampa does come through and win that one. But I do think, like, objectively, he might be the guy. Also because conventions love to default to goalies too. Right? So I think he's probably the shoo-in if they do win. Come back and win the series. But I want to come back to game 4. We've been avoiding the conversation. was that goal,
I know where this is
Nazem
going.
Kadri's goal, was it too many men? What are your thoughts on that? Because I definitely have an opinion here, but I want to hear yours first.
Okay, I'll talk about what I think here. According to the rules, it was too many men, but nobody is calling that. And this is what I mean. Oftentimes, even Jared Bednar said it. You'll see 6 or more skaters touching the ice during a change. Is that technically too many men? No. Let's go into the rule a little bit. I'm going to read off my computer because I don't have Rule 74 memorized here. But
You don't?
Rule 74, for anyone who doesn't know, spells out the too many men penalty. There's many factors that go into this call, by the way, but far and away the biggest factor is reffing, like, contextuality. It's a judgment call.
Yeah, as many are.
Yes. The rule states that players may be changed at any time during the play from the player's bench, provided that the player or players leaving the ice are within 5 feet of the player's bench and before the change is made.
Jeez, okay.
Right? So what that means in colloquial terms is that Nathan MacKinnon was getting off for Nazem Kadri. If Nathan MacKinnon was 5 feet from the bench when Kadri got on, he is presumed to be off the ice.
Yeah.
If the puck touches him, for a lot of people that see that play happen, they go, how's that not too many men? According to the rules, he's off the ice at that point. When Nazem Kadri got on the ice, Nathan MacKinnon was maybe 15, 20 feet from the bench. It wasn't even close, which is why I can see John Cooper saying, you'll see it tomorrow, that really emotional thing that he had.
Yeah, we could talk about that too.
Right, we can talk about that. But here's where the line gets blurred. Although Nathan MacKinnon was not within 5 feet, when Kadri gets into the play, Nathan MacKinnon is within 5 feet, and he's probably off the ice at that point.
That's the thing, because is the rule he comes on the ice? Is it as soon as he touches the ice, he's considered too many men, or is it when he's involved in the play?
So
that matters.
According to the rule, you need to be within 5 feet and out of the play, so it needs to be both.
Okay.
But for the purposes of a Game 4 Stanley Cup Finals match, they're not calling too many men unless he's directly involved in the play. And to Jared Bednar's point, I think right after the game, because they knew it was kind of sus, they went into the dressing room and watched for most of the game. And there were times that he said that you could literally see 7 Tampa players on. And we were even talking about it. We made a joke that when you see, I think it was Sergachev and McDonough getting off the ice, they were not even halfway to the bench, and there's already guys coming on.
Yeah, this happens so many times.
Yes.
Every single game. It's just because it was a game. It resulted in an OT game winner in Game 4 to put the Avalanche 3-1 up that it became a story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure this has happened to Leafs fans without even noticing. I'm sure this exact thing has happened over 82 games, like maybe 20 times that it's led to a goal.
Yeah.
We don't bat an eye because it's part of the game and we don't really care. So who cares if it happens on a Tuesday in November? But it happened now, so it's definitely going to be a talking point. But I saw screenshots, so forgive me if there's a little bit of lacking here, I guess, in the context. But when Kadri touches the puck and starts to make his entry into the zone, is MacKinnon not like flush against the boards by that point?
Yes.
So the way I always understood too many men to be was that if the player coming on, if a player comes on before the player he's subbing for is considered off and touches the puck or gets involved in the play, that's too many men.
Mm-hmm.
But if he doesn't touch the puck until MacKinnon is considered off, well, then he's off.
Yeah, that's exactly why there was so much argument between analysts and on Twitter, because according to the rule cut and dry, which sports are never officiated by, he is offside.
Too many men, you mean?
There's too many men.
Yeah.
Nathan MacKinnon is probably, like I said, 15, 20 feet by the time Kadri gets on. That is technically too many men. But like you said, by the time, I think what happened is Kadri got on the ice and he cut through the middle and he got a seam pass. Maybe it was from Manson. I don't know who it was from. But he got a seam pass. And another blurred line is, when do you define Kadri being in the play?
That's true.
Right?
Because he wouldn't have been able to make that play to the middle if he hadn't jumped the gun on the change.
So it gets really, really confusing, because I would say, and I think most people would say, that Kadri's in the play when he makes that cut to be in the seam pass, because he opens up the ice. And when I looked on Twitter at those same screenshots, Nathan MacKinnon is like right on the 5-foot line. Like, he is so close.
So that's super gray.
And what I will say is, thank God they didn't call that, because if you're going to make the error, you can't call it against a goal. If Nathan MacKinnon was on the other side of the boards, on the other side of the ice when Kadri makes the seam pass, makes the cut play, then fine. But for all intents and purposes, he was out of the play.
Yeah, and that's exactly where I land on it. Like, by the book, and maybe you can argue that it was, but it's impossible to call these things. And I wonder what every like hockey podcast that I've listened to, or people like article that I've read is saying, oh, what's the fallback going to be of this? Are we going to start reviewing too many men's and have video review, have a 5-foot line drawn on the ice? I just hope we accept that this happens in hockey. Just let it happen. It's going to sometimes bite your team in the butt, but it's way better than having everything reviewed and having lines drawn all over the ice so we can get these calls textbook perfect. I just don't think there's a world where that's even feasible.
I agree, but I do think, we've talked about this before, in the playoffs there should be far more video reviews than normal, just because the stakes are way higher.
Yeah.
That should have gone to video review. I don't know why anybody's getting upset about that. It's an overtime call in game 4. Let it take as long as it needs. But there's always going to be contextuality. Like you said, this game isn't going to be officiated by robots. And if it was, people will complain more about the lack of tradition than these plays. So, yeah, I mean, you have to live with that. It's professional sports. You're humans. And the call, the quote-unquote blown call was not even blown. It was just so bang-bang. Of course, you're going to have Tampa Bay fans be pissed off.
For sure. And that computer-generated game sheet that everyone was going off about, I'm pretty sure Tampa had 7 guys listed on the ice. So, I mean, it goes both ways.
Because like people don't understand, and I didn't really understand until I saw the rule, it's the number of players on the ice doesn't dictate whether... according to the rule, there's that many players on the ice. When there's 7 and they're within 5 feet of the bench, according to the rule, there's only 5 because they're counted as off.
Yeah.
Right.
As it should be.
Yes.
Anyway, that was game 4. Game 5 just happened. And even though he made a couple of good saves in this game, the one thing that stuck out to me is that the Avs, they need saves. And Kemper he's looked shaky this series.
He's got no peripheral vision.
Yeah, I hope for his sake that it comes out after the series that he's playing with some messed up vision, because he looks not himself and not very good.
Yeah, you read my mind well. Not even in game 5, going into these next 2 games, this might sound trivial, but the difference maker is going to be goaltending. We know these teams are set up very, very closely, both offensively and defensively. Mm-hmm. If Vasilevsky comes out and makes 50 saves against that very tough checking team, because we know Colorado's play style is get as many pucks as you can on net. They were out shooting the Oilers like 52 to something in most of the games. If Vasilevsky can make those saves, Tampa Bay is going to win. And on the flip side, if Darcy Kemper plays slightly worse than Vasilevsky, Colorado's probably going to win.
Yeah, I agree. They need saves, and slightly worse would be, I think, a bonus, because he looked like he's been considerably worse. Like that first goal in game 5, that Jan Ruda goal, goes right through him, a slap shot on the sidewall.
That was a bad goal.
That can't go in.
Not now either.
And I know things happen. Like it's hard to pick on a guy, but really that can't go in. Even the Palat goal too. That's a tough save to make, just because it's a one-timer in the slot. That's probably a defensive breakdown more than anything.
Oh, at the end of the game.
Right at the end to the winner, I think it was. That's a tough save to make, because honestly, 3 Avalanche players flocked over to Hedman in the corner and left Palat open. So I'd blame that on the defenseman more than anything. But because Palat's shot was kind of he didn't place it, he just fired it on net, and Kemper got a piece of it. Like, you want that one, and I'm sure Kemper wants that one back. It's like, God, I got a piece of it. If we save that, they had the momentum at that point. They had tied the game earlier in that period. I had a live bet on them too, when we'll talk about.
Oh, you took Colorado?
I took Colorado at the beginning of the third when they were down 1.
Oh no,
and they came back.
I took Tampa. In game 6.
But I took them live when they were down. But anyway, I think you want that save, and I hope he bounces back for his own sake, because he's a UFA this year, and hopefully recency bias doesn't make him lose a few bucks on the market. But
especially because he's been good all year.
And he's been really good all year. He's been a bit underrated actually, if anything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been not so great for them, but I don't know. You gotta have faith if you're an Avs fan and you're an Avs player that he's gonna bounce back, or find a way to make a couple of saves in game 6 and 7 if it goes there. But that's the one big takeaway I had from game 5.
One thing I'll say to add to that is that Darcy Kemper I have never seen him in this playoffs make a huge game-saving save. And should that be a knock against a goalie? Probably not, because if a goalie is supposed to make a game-saving, unbelievable save, he's either out of position or the defenseman left him out to dry. So maybe the team just plays such a tight game and he's in the right spots. But there is something to be said as a player who used to play, knowing that your goalie has the ability to make that save. That gives you more confidence. Like I remember that's the save that Vasilevsky made in Game 6, where he did those insane splits against. I don't know if it was against Kreider, but he moved from right to left and he had wrapped around the net, and I thought it was a for sure goal. He gets there. I don't know how, and makes a crazy save.
He makes these 10 bell saves every game. I don't know how he does it.
There has to be confidence in the room in Tampa, knowing that if you leave him out to dry, he's gonna bail you out. And I don't know if you can say the same against Colorado.
No, I don't. You probably can. Even with a healthy Kemper, I think Vazzy is just that much better. But especially if there are some issues with his eyes, or he's lacking some confidence, maybe the gap in terms of clutch factor and net. And you can't really quantify that. We like to talk about stats every once in a while on this show, but there's just something just in here in the clutch about Vazzy that I don't really know if there's any other goalie in the league right now who has it like he does. No. Maybe Igor one day down the road, but he's in a league of his own.
Even you talk about clutch factor. We'll give our predictions really quickly too, because and keep in mind these predictions are predicated upon a Game 6 result that we don't know yet.
Yeah, that's fine.
Normally, you would say that if the game, in my opinion, if the game goes back to Colorado will win in 7 because they're at home. But I think for this series, just because Tampa Bay knows how to win Game 7s, and like I said, Colorado has not played a Game 7 as a team in this series, I think the Stanley Cup Final is decided in Game 6. That's my opinion. I think if this game goes back to 7, I got to take Tampa, even on the road. I have to.
Okay. So then what do you think happens in Game 6 then?
It's so tough. It's so tough because on one hand, there's a desperation factor on Tampa saying you need to win Game 6, and they're at home as well, which I would give them the edge. But you know that there is a sense of urgency in that Colorado room where all those stars are going, holy crap, this can't go 7. Then we open up the opportunity to become the Golden State Warriors of the NHL. Both teams are playing with desperation.
Yeah.
And when both teams are playing with desperation, I'm taking the home team with experience. I think I'm saying Tampa wins in 7.
Holy shit.
And if they do, that would be crazy.
I wouldn't be able to believe that.
You think, knowing where you are now, with the way that the series has played out, do you still think Colorado's taking it?
I think they're gonna win Game 6.
In 6, eh? Wow.
I say that. We just talked about it. This Tampa team is maybe the most resilient hockey team we've seen. At least, we haven't been watching hockey for as long as some of our other listeners, older listeners, have. But definitely the most resilient team I've ever seen. But Cirelli has one arm because he got cut.
Yeah, they're banged up.
Chernak is playing. He seems like he has 1,000 bruises and 4 broken bones because he eats pucks for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I don't know how he's still walking. Nick Paul, funnily enough, he jammed his leg into the boards, scored, and then left because he's clearly hurt. They're really banged up. And I know they've been banged up for 3 years because they've been through 3 deep playoff runs. But they're visibly hurt. And like most times when guys are playing through injuries, you can tell, but you can't really tell. But you can clearly tell that some of these guys are hurt. Even Kucherov's hurt.
Yeah.
He got hurt, I think it was like Game 2 or 3.
Off because Devontae was pissed off and cross-checked him to the back.
He cross-checked him right in the back and like the hips. So he's hurt too.
Yeah.
I just think eventually these things catch up to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Colorado finds a way to win it. But I could easily be wrong, and Tampa can come back and win this series, and I wouldn't even be shocked.
First of all, it's crazy that I think Cirelli hasn't taken a face-off since like Game 4 because he's been so hurt, and that's insane to me. Second of all, I just want to say like the fact that we don't know and there's no clear-cut winner here is just, it should open the eyes of all NHL fans to just experience and appreciate this experience that I don't think ever we will see. 2 powerhouses like this playing a Stanley Cup final, and rare. It didn't even go to 4. It's going to 6. It might go to 7. Like this is what the NHL dreams of.
For sure.
Usually, always the President's Trophy winners go out early, and it happened this year again. But the President's Trophy winners weren't the best team in the league.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever see this again. Appreciate
it's
these
rare.
next 2 games.
It's really rare, especially it happens all the time in the NBA. But it never happens in the NHL where the 2 best teams make it. You're right. We're really lucky as fans to be able to watch it, especially as neutrals, because we don't have a dog in the race. We're not really anxious about it. We just get to enjoy it. Yeah, we do got to savor this next game or 2 if it goes to 7.
If Tampa wins in 7, that'll be so funny. It'd be amazing. I feel so bad for Makar and McKinnon, but it'd be amazing.
Well, like talking about that, I brought up a couple weeks ago, maybe it was a few weeks ago now, that having a 3-1 lead is like kind of dangerous.
Yeah, you did say that.
Especially when you're the home team, because you lose game 5, now you're going back on the road for game 6. If you lose that, your back's against the wall, you're toast.
That's true.
It's the weirdest thing I've ever had an opinion about, because
it makes sense.
Every sports fan would say, I can offer you if you go with any sports fan, I'll offer you a 3-1 lead in the finals of your postseason, and you're the home team. They'd be like, yes, please. And I would do that too.
Mm-hmm.
But there is this idea that you lose game 5 and it's, oh boy, you gotta figure it out on the road in game 6 or you're screwed.
Yeah, but also your argument isn't saying that teams up 3-1 statistically are going to lose. You're going to say if any team is up something, being up 3-1 is going to be, you might fall asleep at the wheel. That's the way I interpret your argument, because you win game 5, you lose game 5 because I have 2 more times to win it. Then the other team goes back home.
That's what it
with
is.
Being like fired up, they're gonna win that. And then in game 7, it's anyone's game. Like you said, the home crowd will definitely matter. But I would rather be a team going into game 7 winning the last 2 than a team saying, "Holy crap, we can't lose 3 in a row."
That's the thing.
Yeah,
It gets into your head. Like the mental aspect is always so important. And maybe this is me being I said this when I talked about this argument, so I won't say it I won't go too long. But maybe that's me having not a professional athlete mindset, where I'm not as mentally robust as them.
It's fair.
But as a fan, I'd be crapping myself if I was an Avs fan. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content. And find the link to our full podcast and all our socials in the description down below.
Also, don't forget to turn on those notifications to get live updates on new videos that we release.